Masterworking armor has been in the game for around a year, and for new and returning players, it might seem a little confusing, or you might be worried about spending materials. Let me try and help you with that. Heads up everyone, my name is Sentinel Grey, and welcome to the channel. Now if you're new or returning to Destiny, you've probably inspected a few people and noticed they have gold borders around their armor pictures. That means that armor is masterworked. What does masterworking armor mean, and what does it do for you? Whenever you masterwork a piece of armor, all the stats on the armor are increased by 2 points, giving you a total stat boost of 12 over the entire piece. Alongside this, a masterwork piece of armor has a total of 10 energy that is used to slot mods in your armor, which boost things like reload speed, flinch reduction, and target acquisition. However, masterworking your armor takes a bunch of special and rare materials to do so. But is it worth it? The straight answer is yes, 100%. Having masterworked armor gives you the ability to really play with armor mods which support different builds in Destiny. Just as an example, with the right mods you can turn the Hunter class into a healer. For the subclasses that are currently in the game, the Hunter has literally no abilities or anything to be the healing type of class, but with the right mods, you can do it and be pretty efficient at it. Not only that, but the 2 points you get for all stats on the armor are sometimes just enough to push you over the hurdle from something like 78 recovery to 80. Plus, look at it this way. If you have all 5 armor slots filled with masterworked armor, that's a total of 10 stat boost to all of your stats. That's kind of hard to pass up if you think about it. Now, before you go off and just masterwork any random piece of armor, there are things you need to be aware of and kind of think about before you go and do this. 1. Ignore what the armor looks like. 2. Make sure the armor you masterwork has stat points in the right place for your build or playstyle. 3. Make sure the energy type on your armor is what you need for which mods you plan to use. And 4. Ask yourself this: is this piece worth it? Let's start with number 1. Depending on who you are, this may or may not be an issue. Some players treat fashion as the end game, and others couldn't care less. Regardless, the reason I say this is because currently there are universal ornaments for each class that you can stick on any piece of armor you get. If you're into Destiny enough to watch this, then you may be into it enough to buy a full ornament set from the Eververse store so you don't have to look like a Jackson Pollock painting. To be clear, I'm not trying to sell you shit in the store. I'm just saying that if you care that much about how you look, you'll probably grab an ornament to retain your sanity. Another reason being is because coming in Season 14, Destiny will finally have transmogrification, which means that any armor you earned in the past can be used as an ornament for whatever piece you need. To put it simply, if you really like the look of that one blue chest piece you had, but knew the stats and everything on it was crap, you can now make that awesome, legendary chest piece you got from the raid look like that blue armor. Now let's move on to stats. The stats on armor for the most part are randomly rolled. The only time when this is not the case is the occasional seasonal event, which allows you to kind of pick and choose if you want a piece of armor to heavily lean one way or the other. In case you don't know, I want to run down each of the armor stats and what they do so that you can have a full grasp on where you want your armor to go. Being really basic here, mobility increases your movement speed and maximum jump height. Resilience increases the amount of damage you can take before you die. Recovery increases the speed at which you regain your lost health. Discipline decreases the cooldown time of your grenades. Intellect decreases the cooldown time of your super ability. And strength decreases the cooldown time of your melee ability. Also, each of the individual classes, such as Titan, Warlock, and Hunter, have class abilities which their cooldown times are governed by the following stats. Titans use Resilience to reduce their barrier cooldown, Warlocks use Recovery for their Rift, and Hunters use Mobility for their Dodge. To be clear, that doesn't replace what these stats do, it's more of just an addition. Like if you have a Titan with high resilience, he can take a lot of damage before he dies, but also his barrier class ability comes back a lot faster. So if you want to decrease the cooldown of your class ability, you'll have to remember what stat affects it directly. The nice thing is the game tells you this whenever you hover over the stats in your menu. Another thing the game tells you is that each stat has 10 tiers. For every 10 points in a stat, that stat moves to the next tier, which affects whatever thing that stat pertains to. As an example, your grenade cooldown time is only affected when you reach 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on points in discipline. And let's just say you have like 58 or 59 points in discipline. The game does not round up. You have to have those 1 or 2 points in order to push the stat into the next tier. So with that knowledge at your disposal, let me show you my Titan as an example of a build. I run a crowd control Titan that uses Middle Tree Sentinel known as Code of the Commander. What Code of the Commander does is that any void ability damage I deal applies void detonators. After the enemies either die or take a good amount of damage, those detonators explode, dealing more void damage and applying more detonators. Not only that, but the explosions the void detonators trigger also heal and give ability energy to myself and nearby allies. Because this build is half crowd control, half support, the two things that let me deal void damage in a short amount of time are my grenade and melee. So when I look for armor, my main concern is how much discipline and strength does it give me? For myself personally, and for this build, my super isn't an important factor in what I do, so I tend to look for armor with stats that have very low intellect, but high everywhere else, like this Helm of Exile for example. As you might already know as well, there are exotic armor pieces and weapons that help with stat increases, cooldown times, ability energy. So if you're going to masterwork some armor, it's best to get a general idea on how you want to run your character and what exotics you're going to use, so you don't waste materials on a piece of armor that's going to work against that build. Moving on to number 3. If you look at any piece of armor, you can see they have an energy type and amount. Each time you level up a piece of armor, it increases the amount of energy it has, which increases the amount or quality of the mods that can be placed on said armor piece. This level up process can increase the energy of the armor up to a max of 10, which then masterworks the armor and gives you a full +2 to all stats. The thing about armor energy is that only certain mods can be placed on armor that have certain energy types. For example, Powerful Friends is an armor mod that can only be placed on armor that has arc energy. If you have a piece of armor that has either void or solar energy, you won't even see this mod pop up in the list of options. So if you're going to start formulating builds with mods and everything, it's best to know which ones you want to use so that you know what energy to have on which armor pieces you want. Now before you go deleting that awesome armor piece you have that has the wrong energy type, listen. You can actually change the energy type on any piece of armor you get. Sure, it costs materials, but it's far better to change the energy type before you masterwork a piece of gear as opposed to after. If you change the energy type after you masterwork it, then the cost becomes insane and you're better off finding another piece of armor. And one last thing for those of you who are curious. The energy on the armor has nothing to deal with its stats. So that means just because your chest piece has solar energy on it doesn't mean that it's more proficient at this or that or whatever. Energy and stats are completely unrelated. Now for the final and probably most important thing. Make sure the piece that you masterwork is worth it. I know it seems obvious, but when I get a piece of gear, there are two things that immediately go through my head. First thing being is, what's the total stat roll on this? The lowest a piece of armor can roll, on total stats that is somewhere around the low to mid 40s. And the highest a piece can reach is around the 70 to 72 range. Because of that, if the first digit in the total number stat isn't 6, then I don't even pay attention to it. I immediately scrap it. When I look for armor, I want the total to first reach 62 or above. After that, I take a look at that piece and what it could add or take away from my total stats. For example, I could gain another 10 points in discipline, but it might cost me 5 points in recovery, 3 points in strength, and I have to determine if that trade-off is good or not. And the second thing is, when will this piece be sunset? Bungie recently brought sunsetting back into Destiny with Beyond Light. For those of you that don't know or understand what that is, sunsetting means that your gear has a maximum power cap that it can be infused to, and currently, as of this video, that power cap will be a year from when it was released or introduced. You can actually check this on your gear by hovering over the total power. It'll tell you the max power that the piece can possibly be raised to. So if I receive a piece of amazingly rolled armor, but it'll only be sticking around until the end of this season or next season, I tend not to masterwork it. At that point, I don't think the price of materials are going to be worth how long it'll stay relevant. And actually, that's a good segue. Let me go over the materials that you're going to need for masterworking, because that's actually very important too. You'll need 5 things to masterwork a piece of armor: Glimmer, Legendary Shards, Enhancement Cores, Enhancement Prisms, and Ascendant Shards. Out of those 5, Glimmer and Legendary Shards are going to be the easiest thing for you to get. Whenever you dismantle legendary items, you get both of them, and you can get Glimmer from basically anything you do in the game. At this point, you should probably have plenty of both. Enhancement cores, on the other hand, are going to be like hit or miss. You'll get these from dismantling some gear, but not all. They're like a rare drop chance. But if you use a consumable called Finest Matter Weave, that gives you a chance to drop a enhancement core on boss kills. The very nice thing about this is that the Matter Weave effect stays active until you actually get a core to drop. So you can, take forever to do this, or you can take 5 minutes. It's honestly up to the game on when it wants to drop you one. You could also get these from Adept and Heroic Nightfalls for final rewards as well. The last place you can get them, but maybe I guess you can say the most expensive, is going to be buying them from Spider. You can buy 5 a day for 30 legendary shards a piece. Now, enhancement prisms is where it starts to get a little difficult. So you can buy these straight from Banshee in the tower, but they cost 10 enhancement cores, 25 of the daily random planetary material that it changes by the day, and 10,000 glimmer. Or you can buy them from Spider for 400 legendary shards. But personally, I think both of those are pretty costly. If you don't want to buy them, there are a few different ways that you can get it, one of which is doing heroic, legendary, master, or grandmaster nightfall strikes. That's the most common places I got mine, and if you do grandmaster nightfalls, they drop pretty frequently. And finally, Ascendant Shards. Most expensive and pain in the ass material to get in the game. There are only 2 places you can get these things as of right now. From Banshee, which you can buy for 10 enhancement prisms, 100 of the random daily planetary material, and 50,000 glimmer. Do that, or you can either go into the Nightfall strikes. Masters and Grandmasters are probably what you're going to want to hit because they're the only place they'll drop. Bungie has referenced a couple times that they want Ascendant Shards to be easier to access for, solo players and everything like that. So there might be a change in the future, but as of right now, those are the only 2 ways to get these things.
But how much of each material do you need to masterwork a piece of armor?
Well, Yuri, I'm glad you asked. To masterwork a single piece of armor, you're going to need 16,000 glimmer, 25 legendary shards, 3 enhancement cores, 3 enhancement prisms, and 1 ascendant shard. The only change to this is if you want to masterwork an exotic piece of armor. That 1 ascendant shard then turns into 3 ascendant shards. I know, it's expensive. But since exotics aren't going to be sunset, or they're not supposed to be getting sunset ever, it is kind of worth it because then you don't have to invest ever again. So I think I covered all the bases without getting too extremely deep into working with mods and certain exotics and being charged with light and war mind cells and other crap, So, if you've only been half listening or want the short version to that, listen up. Don't pay attention to what a piece looks like. You can change it. If the stat total isn't 60 or higher, don't masterwork it. Have a build in mind when looking at stats. And be sure the piece you masterwork doesn't get sunset too soon. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in either my live streams that are on Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or reach out to me on here in the comments or on Twitter. You can literally get a hold of me almost anywhere that I am. I want to help you guys as much as I can with whatever you need, whether that be certain builds or weapons or whatever. And if you like the video, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more. I'll see you all next time, and remember, keep your head up and be kind to each other. Bye now.